The autumn night spilled myriads of star beads along the cloth of the sky. I could still feel summer's warmth in the air. The earth hadn't cooled down completely yet, and was giving its heat even when the sun had already set. In just a couple of weeks, this hour would see winter like cold. I was looking into the dark blue arch of our world, and imagining that it too held life, distant and incomprehensible. A falling star across the sky, burning in the atmosphere, and I made a wish. May everything be well in all of our lives. I often thought that by painting yourself as an ally of justice, you just ran away from real problems. Waving your banner of good, you go headlong to your purpose without fear or reproach. Without fear of failure. Well, things didn't work out, but I did everything right. How often has the vague ideal of justice been used for evil? True, true. Are there any absolute values at all? Those that are equally good for everyone? And if yes, what is the absolute evil that opposes the absolute good? These extremes always scared me. An anthropomorphic devil with horns and hooves is laughable, but eternal bliss causes only fear, so alien it is to human nature. And if all of us are nothing more but a short stage of evolution of the universe between the Big Bang and the new singularity, I'd like to live my part of this stage as I was used to, being a human until the end. Therefore I wish simple happiness for myself, Catherine, and Himitsu. Ooh, that's not gonna happen, buddy. I don't care what story you're reading, there's no way all three of you end up happily ever after, in any way, shape, or form. I didn't know what would happen tomorrow, or in a year, who I would be left with, or what if I would be left alone. I just wanted some peace for all of us. I wanted to get back to 2 years ago when life was so much simpler. You think it was simpler, but I'm pretty sure there was some shady shit going on behind the scenes then. Well, actually, we know there was, because we know at least Etho was looking at him. And I'm sure Ms. Winters was probably taking a few looks herself. When Catherine and I were together, when my parents were alive, and Himitsu was just a childhood friend, I kicked a stone under my foot and it flew like a ball after it modded on his free kick and hit the bumper of a truck parked on the side of the road. The alarm didn't go off, or maybe the old piece of junk didn't even have one. I didn't have to run away. However, it made me come to my senses and get back to sinful earth. The lights were on in Himitsu's house. It wasn't that late though, so I wasn't surprised. I stopped and just stared at her windows, but didn't manage to see anything. My front door's creaking sounded like it was its last every time. I wondered for how much longer it would hold. The entire house appeared to be old, decrepit, but at the same time still alive. It was like an old man who could barely move his legs, but still kept the shine of youth in his eyes. My parents used to tell me that before us it housed the family of a corrupt government official. Nice. He was imprisoned, and his wife and kids had to sell all their property to pay the debts. Although I couldn't remember who had owned the house before them, or perhaps I never knew. When we were little, I liked to scare Himitsu by coming up with stories of seeing previous owners' ghosts in the dark. I was telling her that once an executioner and his family lived there, and one day he went mad and cut them all to pieces with his katana, and then committed harakiri. It was quite a banal story, but it was more than enough for impressionable Himitsu. She would cry and complain about me to her parents. Despite the fact that in such a house there really could be ghosts, the scariest thing I ever saw were the shadows of the trees growing in the garden as they swung in the wind. And perhaps the creaking floors, walls, and ceilings. This house was old, and almost everything here was making weird sounds. Not everyone would like a dwelling infused with the auras of its many previous owners. The house was built in the Meiji era, as far as I knew, so it could have had many. I often used to find many antique things in the attic and storerooms. Ningyo, household items, old kokeshi paper sheets with weirdly drawn hieroglyphs I didn't know, even a sinai that I then played with for long. I played with for long. That's a weird phrasing of that. Until I broke it. The world of childhood is immense. The simplest things become magical artifacts, and the smallest details enough for a child's imagination. However, soon my mom threw away almost all the old junk, replacing it with more functional and modern items. Comfort and functionality with a discount, but without the moss-covered memories and dusty tatters of times past. Plastic instead of wood, TV instead of a bookshelf, an air conditioner instead of an Ogi fan. And only the Kotatsu managed to survive all the house's owners, giving warmth and taking nothing in return. In my room there used to be only bare tatamis and closets with futons. Maybe it used to be a guest room? Maybe it served to organize sleeping places for a dozen men quickly, and without much hassle. The Japanese of that time weren't very picky. I recall Kagome saying that such a huge house was too big for one person. I often thought so myself, especially during the nights. Every item has a purpose, and whatever you do with it, it will try to fulfill it. If the house was built for a big family, and only big families lived there, it's natural that a lonely student would feel uncomfortable surrounded by all the empty space. Bedrooms without owners, a huge guest room that hadn't seen guests in ages, an abandoned garden, and dusty corridors. If I stay alive after all this, I should think about finding a more suitable place for myself. Maybe. Also, yeah, when are we going to open the letter? That's another thing I want revealed. Because I saw the little graphic there in the corner. I'm like, when are we open that letter? That letter that Catherine left behind. I need that. I need those answers too. What does that say? I dreamt I was in a... Wait, didn't she take the letter back though? Oh, I feel like she did. Well, maybe she'll give it back at some point. I don't know. I dreamt I was in a game where I had to develop my character. I was leveling up, investing experience points into agility and strength, receiving new skills. I wish it worked like that in real life. Once you reach a new level, old enemies are no threat to you anymore. On the other hand, that also means there are stronger monsters ahead. I was dragged out of that wonderful RPG world by the doorbell. I got up, but didn't hurry to open the door. Who could it be? Maybe they just got the wrong door? I wasn't expecting anyone and doubted someone would come to my place by accident. But whoever it was, they kept ringing and clearly had no intention of leaving. Then again, no one I should have been afraid of would be ringing the bell in broad daylight. "Coming!" I shouted, quickly dressed up and dragged myself to the door. Oh. Not who I expected, but alright.
Nika-kit?
Himitsu was standing on the porch, dressed in her school uniform. She wore a strange facial expression, like she just learned she won 1 billion yen in the lottery, and then someone told her the tax is so high she actually needed to pay more than she had won.
Nika-kit, why did you lock the door?
I wasn't expecting you. My words sounded cold, even though I didn't mean them to. I cast a glance at the clock. It was 9 and change. Why aren't you at school?
Nika-kun, you aren't a teacher and can't reprimand me.
I see.
Are you alone?
Of course, who else could... I started automatically. Ah, yeah. She lowered her head, trying to conceal her embarrassment. Do you want to come in? She just nodded slightly in response. Yesterday, I spent a lot of time thinking that Himitsu, maybe, wasn't all that guilty. Even if everything was true, wouldn't it make sense for me to try and have an honest conversation with her now? No. She was really bad at lying, after all. She couldn't have been pretending all those years, could she? Then there was also the situation with Catherine and what Himitsu saw. A shitty situation, however you look at it. Shitty even without all the spying stuff.
I haven't had breakfast yet.
Himitsu was about to get to work, but immediately caught herself, and it was as if something had dropped in her chest, her eyes losing all expression.
Never mind, though.
Of course. Let's eat. Breakfast is the most important meal, after all. Came to my senses. We were so used to behaving this exact way that as soon as something went totally wrong, we couldn't just immediately change our habits. Slips of tongue and omissions. There's one thing I hated in this world. It's hypocrisy. I'm really sorry it happened like this. Things should have been different.
Nika-kun, you don't need to apologize. I just thought that after everything that you...
Himitsu could barely manage to talk. Seemed she was about to burst into tears at any moment. I took a step towards her on autopilot, but immediately froze, unable to decide on anything to do.
You told me.
Yeah, see, that's the thing I had an issue with, is like, he already had his, like, half-baked confession. But she had told me a lot, too. And what did that all amount to in reality? My daughter's handling the mission well. I started to cook breakfast, trying not to look her in the eyes. I don't really have much. Got some eggs left. Want me to fry them? Himitsu didn't respond and sank heavily onto a chair. Let's count that as a yes. The eggs were sizzling merrily in the pan, ignoring the tension in the air. I was constantly mixing the eggs and ended up with airy yellow lumps instead of the usual sunny side ups. That's sort of scrambled eggs they have in American films, if I wasn't mistaken. I'm sorry, what did you describe them as? Airy yellow lumps? Yeah, okay, I guess. When he said instead of the usual sunny side ups, I thought they were still like circular eggs, but they had turned just solid yellow somehow. I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, no, American scrambled eggs. I'm like, oh yeah, I know what you mean by airy yellow lumps now. thought this man just like really fucked up making some sunny side eggs. It wasn't the best choice. Not that I had anything to choose from. Hey, scrambled eggs can fuck, dude. Don't diss scrambled eggs. Sorry if it's not very good. She put the plate in front of Himitsu and sat opposite her. She picked out a piece of it with her chopsticks and said,
The shape isn't great.
well, sorry, I didn't leave enough room to draw a heat with sauce. Oh, draw a heart?
I wasn't going to.
This has gone too far. Look, I know how this looks from your perspective, but I'm tired of thinking it's all my fault. I love Catherine. Whatever happened between us, I don't need to justify that to you.
That's not what you told me just a week ago.
Himitsu said, looking at me from under her brows. I mean, that is true, homie. You can't just come at her like that. You have to acknowledge that you did, in fact, fuck up with your whole little confession thing. It's one thing to say, like, oh, a week ago, I didn't think, getting with Catherine was possible, so I was trying to move on, and maybe I jumped the gun a bit, and I fucked up in that regard. Sure, that's fair. But just to be like, listen, I don't have to justify myself to you. Like, yeah, nah, homie, ease up. Well, man proposes.
I understand, Nico-kun. It's none of my business, and I shouldn't get involved. I understand. It still hurts to see you ruin your life, unable to understand what's really going on.
I understand. It still hurts to see you ruin your life, unable to stand what's really going on. Why did he just repeat that line in his head? So what's really going on? It'd be nice if you told me.
I did, many times.
She clearly hadn't gotten my hint. Even in such a state, humiliated and insulted, Himitsu didn't look like a spy. She didn't look like her father's unwilling accomplice either. I hesitated. If this is only about our relationship.
What else could this be about, Nico-kun?
She interrupted me, breaking into a shout. Then it has nothing to do with you. Ooh. My voice didn't sound nearly as confident as I wanted. I guess it's not how I imagined this conversation, but on the other hand, what else could I expect from Himitsu? That she would say, live happily ever after?
After everything? That we survived because of her? How can you?
But I love Catherine. I've always loved her. I can't do anything about it.
And what about her?
Himitsu jumped off the chair, ran to me, but immediately stopped as if she'd seen a monster. She recoiled back to the garden door, opened and closed it again, walked to the kotatsu, and gave me an angry look and immediately turned away.
Nico-kun, do you really think she loves you? That she ever loved you? Because when you were together earlier, then...
Himitsu choked on her sobs and broke into a run, away from me. I was sitting silently, forgetting to even breathe. The most horrible thing was that I barely felt sorry for her. Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's like, I want to feel bad and be like, no, Himitsu, but at the same time, I'm like, Himitsu did something herself. Himitsu's not innocent. There's something she did. I need to know the severity of that before I pass judgment on anyone. That is life. Such are the social rules and norms. I couldn't be with two girls at the same time, even if I loved them both, each in their own way. Moreover, I didn't want that. Good man. Couldn't imagine any one of us being happy in that threesome. Yeah. Both of them were too possessive. I really had been afraid of losing Himitsu more than anything in the world just a couple of days ago. But at that time, I had no hope I would ever be together with Catherine again. Were we together now, though? One thing I knew for sure was that a one-night stand meant much less for Katya than it did for Himitsu. Suddenly I felt terribly tired. I had seemingly slept enough, but when you're brought back from the land of fairy tales to the real world so brazenly, you're left with a sense of incompleteness. My eyes closed by themselves, my mind ready to leave my body to find itself in the realm of might and magic again. Instead, it's another nightmare, isn't it? However, this time I wasn't fated to become a legendary hero. I didn't even become a simple NPC, as I saw no dreams. Oh. Damn. Still, I was woken up in the same unconscionable way as in the morning, by a nasty doorbell. At least this time they weren't ringing non-stop. I came to my senses pretty quickly. Himitsu again? Did she forget something? No, after such a fight she would need much more time to return to her senses. The clock was saying 4 in the afternoon. Yeah, there she is. I opened the door and saw Catherine. Still asleep? She asked with a bored expression. Well, I mean, yeah, I was. Why? Nothing. Nothing. She smiled and confidently stepped inside, moved out of her way automatically. Hell yeah. Nothing you can do if someone does come. Open the door. But remember, don't say anything you're not supposed to say, and don't do anything that might have consequences. If Irina thinks I'm not gonna fuck, she's out of her mind. So I opened the door. Catherine walked into the kitchen, looked around, and sat in a chair and crossed her legs, just like her mother. That thought made me feel uncomfortable. Aren't you going to offer me anything? Tea or coffee? I've been at school since early in the morning, not sacking up half the day like you. At school? She'd found the time to change, though. Tea. I kept bumbling, having still not fully come to my senses. Katya took the initiative right away. We may have parted on bad terms yesterday, she said somewhat absently and went quiet, clearly waiting for my reaction. Considering the circumstances. Even still, if my mom hadn't... Was she really trying to apologize for her mother again? It was nice to hear that, sure, but her persistence could find better use elsewhere. We both knew that Catherine wasn't responsible for Mrs. Winter's actions, whether she had known about them or not. Why weren't you at school? Doesn't look like you're sick. She smirked. What's with that smile? That looks like a very awkward smile. It reminds me of fucking Jessica's face. Like, girl, you're kind of forcing it there, ain't you? Did you need to know about my talk with Irina yesterday? After all, Katya was yet to tell me anything on her own initiative. It was like I had to tear every single bit of information out of her with pliers. On the other hand, I could no longer trust Himitsu, and I was scared to be left alone with my problems. The only question was, did Catherine deserve my trust? Yeah, I'd say she does. I reckon it was still too early for that. I reckon you're a fuckhead. Just being lazy. Just, huh? Exactly. Okay then. Is that all? Put a cup of tea in front of her. Have you just come to find out why I've been skipping classes? No. She replied slyly and took a sip. I sighed desperately and sat next to her. It's so difficult with you sometimes. I know, right? The few minutes that we spent in silence seemed to last forever. I was looking at Catherine, trying to understand what changed about her in a year and a half. Was she taller? Didn't seem so. The haircut was the same, or at least very similar to what she had back then. Figure, weight, cup size? I couldn't tell. It's too difficult to spot any major difference at first glance. This happens too. The person looks the same, but once you get to talk to them, it's like they're someone else. It was also possible that I'd simply never known the real her. In any case, I'm grateful you're here. How couldn't I? Relationships are made up of these little things. Relationships? I scoffed, stood up and walked around the kitchen. Katya, we've already talked about this. Not Romeo and Juliet, I know, but it seemed like she had been preparing for a serious conversation, but only came up with that one line. You know, you've been acting weird since we slept together. Got what you wanted, and now all that love talk is over with? Yeah, get his ass, Catherine. Get his ass. But yeah, what, you don't love me anymore because you got the hit? Not at all. Although that's exactly how it looked. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about it like that, but she's got a point. I can definitely see that. So, you want us to be together again? Don't you? Maybe there's something stopping you? Himitsu, for example? No. She and I... It became hard for me to speak, like I was lying in confession. And the priest, all the parishioners, and most importantly God himself, knew. I lowered my head. She and I are... Well, we kind of had a fight. Oh. Catherine raised her eyebrows. Could it have been on my account? No. She definitely wasn't the reason, in my view. Why then? I didn't know how to respond and couldn't come up with a remotely good lie. Perhaps sometimes the paths of even the closest people diverge. You can feed this pseudo-philosophical bullshit to her, not me. Okay, fine, it's because of you. Are you happy now? It was partially the truth. Yes, quite. Nice. She smiled, stood up, and came closer to me. Yes? I'm happy you made the right choice. I'm just not used to being in an either-or situation. Catherine was standing so close, I had no idea what she wanted from me. Dick, probably. That again? Such a beanpole. Sometimes you act like a complete child. She laughed and took me by the hand. The right choice deserves a proper reward. Reward, huh? Once again, I felt embarrassed. Like Porychik telling a servant about a cornet who threw up on his uniform at a recent ball. I can imagine what you're thinking, but I meant something very different. Good. I wasn't really thinking anything. I just wanted to go somewhere and spend some time together, talk about our lives. Catherine let go of my hand and turned away. Yeah, of course. That's definitely what I was thinking too. I kept mumbling, but immediately remembered Irina's words. Well, screw her. Yeah! A date with Catherine. Yeah! Wasn't that the thing I've been dreaming about for the last year and a half? Yeah! Why would anyone need a life spent within four walls? Yeah! I don't bite, you know. Unless you want me to. It seemed like she was tired of my indecisiveness. It's just a bit sudden. I'm sure you prepared in advance, but I've been put on the spot. On the spot? She mocked me. Where do you want to go to? Somewhere people usually go for a date. Where did you go with Himitsu? We didn't. I cleared my throat. The amusement park. How do you like the idea? Brilliant. Let's go. Why was it much easier for me to believe that we had had sex a couple of days ago than that we were going on a full-fledged date? Why did I choose it at all? The amusement park certainly wasn't as crowded on a weekday as on the weekends. Sometimes it seemed to me as if massive metal constructions standing idly here were like dinosaur skeletons in a museum. Just as huge and grand, they had long lost their might and served only as a memory of an era long past for mildly curious tourists who dropped by the museum only because it was mentioned in their guidebook. Lost in your philosophical problems again? Not philosophical ones, really. Do you like it here? Yeah, why not? Amusement parks are about the same everywhere. You just haven't been to the USSR yet. Don't they have anything like this there? Of course they do. I caught myself. I don't know. I don't remember. I see. You were walking around the park, not going on any rides, not even visiting the haunted house, just observing others having fun. If I was alone, I'd have been fine at that, but what about Catherine? Although the entire time we were there, she wouldn't stop smiling. I see you're actually enjoying this, even though we're not doing anything. Are you unhappy about something? No, everything's great. That's what I think too. You've never been a fan of active recreation. What's active about pointless adrenaline spikes? I agree, except we stopped by the Ferris wheel. Another Ferris wheel moment? Want to go for a ride? Yes. Oh, yeah. She understands. Catherine gets me. She loves a good Ferris wheel. Let's go. She replied wistfully. Yeah. We had to stand in a queue of constantly clamoring children, but finally we found ourselves alone in a rather spacious cabin. I wish I could go to the very top where no one can reach you and stay there forever. Is it your turn to philosophize now? No, it's just a dream. Katya looked sad and wasn't even looking out at the cabin windows. Wasn't looking at the world from a bird's eye view of the entire point of this wheel. Little people were swarming on the ground. Tiny children were carelessly chasing each other across the square. A small janitor was unhurriedly sweeping the street, collecting wrappers, broken balloons, candy floss sticks, and other waste products of human happiness into one pile. Small people on the roller coasters were shouting just like the big ones. Did you know that those things are called American mountains in Russian? Really? And why is that? Catherine smiled, but it looked forced. I don't even know, to be honest. I guess because they go up and down, rising and falling. I think that sounds like the historical cycles of every country. Maybe. I could tell Catherine was thinking seriously about something. On the ground, among other people, she probably managed to forget about it for a time. But here, where only birds and airplanes were closer to the sky, where she was left alone with me. If you want to talk about something. If I only knew what to say to you and how to say it. Sometimes I try to look so mature and pretend that I understand it all. Katya, if you don't tell me, I can't... I wanted to say I can't help you, but how could I help in this situation? Having a mother like hers was itself a serious challenge, not even mentioning her real job. There are things I haven't told you about, couldn't tell you, and still can't. Don't worry, they aren't related to my mom or your parents. She was visibly forcing herself to speak, barely finding the words. About things that happened long ago, but still influence my life. I was silent, and Catherine waited a while between each sentence. Sometimes something happens by itself, and then you don't want everything to go wrong, and you do what you think is best, but then you regret what you've done. Was she talking about our breakup? Was she regretting that? Emotions overwhelmed me. It's long in the past, don't blame yourself, time heals all. I was blurting out pointless cliches. I want to say that happiness can follow after a tragedy. Sometimes you need to lose something to get something greater. Lose. Catherine repeated after me in a voice devoid of all emotion, the voice of a subway announcer. I'm sure we'll be fine. Of course, I should have sat next to her, hugged and kissed her, held her tightly, not let her go until the Ferris wheel brought us away into the starry night. However, at that moment, I felt that Catherine was a world away from me. Distant and lonely, on her empty planet on the other end of the universe, where there are no suns and stars, where matter froze and the endless process of creation stopped forever. And right now, I could not reach her. The wheel finished its rotation and stopped. I helped Catherine out of the cabin. Cool, I liked it. She smiled, as if there hadn't been that chasm between us a moment ago. Where next? Want to grab a bite? Great idea. I immediately noticed a kiosk selling hot dogs. It's very American, don't you think? True.